Engineer. So in that I work on a range of services considering from compute engine, cloud run. Then in the CI/CD pipeline, I use the Cloud Wheel to connect the GitHub and working on the CI/CD pipeline in that created the image, stored it in the artifact registry and hosted application on the Cloud Run. Then there are some server in that I was the member managing the server. It was purely the Linux base in that creating the files, folder, installing the websites, all these things. Then I work on a autopilot cluster in the Kubernetes in that the application is hosted and the service which uses a node port. Then there are some different data pipeline in that the BigQuery cloud storage connected to the data flow template. Like that, I had the range of services exposure. That's about myself.
Okay, okay, good. Uh, so as you mentioned that you are working with a, I mean after development the code, then you are pushing code into the GitHub, and from that you are creating a CI/CD pipeline to deploy the container based workload in the cloud run. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So can you explain what are the authentication and authorization you are configuring in GitHub so that you are able to trigger the CI/CD pipeline to deploy the container into GCP Cloud Run?
Okay, so for that, I was using the SSH authorization, means from the compute engine, creating the key pair, and after that, the key which is generated, that key is stored in the GitHub. There is a one option SSH. In that, I was storing the key, and at the time of creating this CI/CD pipeline, there is a one developer account which is required in the cloud build that need to enable in the IAM. That's the thing I was using.
So how the key managed? How?
Okay, so for actually managing the key, like I was creating the key on the VM, and that key I am storing in the GitHub. So after that, I am getting the authorization to connect to the GitHub to the VM.
GitHub to VM.
Yeah,
And
and
okay.
this thing will required when I was hosting the application on the compute engine, but when I was creating the CI/CD pipeline with the cloud build, this thing will not required.
Okay, can you explain for cloud built? Okay, so in cloud build, whenever you are going to set up a CI, then how to interact with GitHub?
Okay, so first of all, need to create the trigger. In that trigger, need to connect the GitHub repository, and there is an option will come in the cloud build to connect to the GitHub. In this way, we can set up the CI.
So CI and CD, which criteria you are following to trigger the pipeline, CI CD pipeline, the help of tag or commit ID, or what are the process you are following to trigger the CI CD?
Okay, so we are following the repo means when there is a changes in the code, then the application UI will reflected within the changes happen in the code side of the GitHub. So actually we are using the commit ID.
Commit ID you are using for the CI process, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, could you please tell me if some access related issue or deployment is not successful? So, two, three issue can you highlighted here if you have faced as part of your deployment?
Okay. So the first issue I had faced, like whenever the commit or the changes was happened in the code, that time actually the reflect will not be able to get in the UI, and that was actually happening because the image which was created through this GitHub code that actually taking the cache. This was the one problem was happened with me. The another problem maybe happened like there are some updating issue on the compute engine side if we are hosting the application on the compute engine. That's according to me like the problem can happen if there is a proper CI/CD with cloud build we have integrated.
Okay. So if I'll ask you to write a CI and CD YML file for a simple deployment, can you write the code?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me open a code editor here, uh, and just let me code editor. Okay. Once code editor is visible to you, please
Yeah.
write the config YML file for CI and CD to use in cloud build. And once you write that, then also what config YML will use for the GitHub. So if you can write a template, that would be great.
Okay.
I think that the code editor is visible to you.
Yeah. So there is no any scenario for writing the code.
Scenario in the sense you the cloud build YML file first will build the code, create a Docker image for the CI, and CD fetch that code from the artifact and deploy into the cloud run.
Yeah. No, I am not remembering the code.
Okay, all right. So now move on to next question.
Okay.
Uh, okay, suppose uh, for example, whenever you are creating a CI/CD pipeline, ensure that some security preventing error is throwing, right?
Hmm.
So uh, what is the best practice you will follow for your version control system to manage the source control securely and implementing automatically before testing? So how you will integrate the testing methodology to test if in case any security related issue, so how we can overcome through the before testing, and you test it, then the code analysis, and then catch up the vulnerability. Earlier, for example, the deployment was happening, but after this testing process, so everything will, if any is there any issue, it will encounter, and will fix it, then will deploy it. So have you ever as part of this testing tool integrated with the CI/CD pipeline?
Yeah. So actually, I was using the Sonar Cube for this scenario. So with the help of Sonar Cube, I was scanning the code and after that getting the one report. So on that report, whatever the vulnerability was there, that I was able to check.
Okay, all right. So, how will you view your transaction history in Google Cloud Platform? Suppose who is doing what in the Google Cloud Platform. Suppose you have a team, 15 member of team, but who is doing what? How will track?
Okay, so for that, I need to check the log, and in that log, I will check the admin activity log. So in that, I can able to see who is doing what.
Admin activity log or some other area which you have to check?
Yeah, so there are two, three type of log was there. So with the help of admin log, actually what the admin has did something in the console that I will get the information and then again there are some other type of block which I'm not remembering right now, but yeah, with the help of that I can get the idea like who did what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if I'll move on to next question. For example, you are going to implement a serverless architecture on GCP, right? And what are the benefit and drawback of serverless computing?
Okay, so for the serverless computing architecture, I can use the Cloud Run service. With the help of that service, the I would say the advantage are like I do not need to care about the infrastructure in the sense of the secure network, how will be my the size memory, which operating system I need to use. So these I did not need to take care. And the disadvantage I will say, like if the client is saying we have to optimize the cost anyhow, so we get the some benefit if we are using the infra as a service, like how will be the storage, the memory, which operating system we can use according to the performance. These are the like secure network where we can store our resources. So these are the like things we will get with the help of the in platform as a services, which we didn't get, but we get the access in the infra as a services like on compute engine. And the advantage also we get, like we didn't need to worry about the infra side, and we will get the more time to take care of our code. So these are the things like the some advantage and disadvantage in the infrastructure, which is now considering as a platform as a service.
Okay, so as you are working with Cloud Run, so let me ask you a couple of questions related to Cloud Run. So, what is the limit to handle application request in a particular Cloud Run service?
Okay, so there is a no limit actually, but means on the Google Cloud documentation they have
Yeah, I'm sorry, there is some network glitch happen. Yeah,
no no issue. Can I
continue.
start?
Yeah,
Uh, so like there is no any such some particular some particular we can say the number, like that is the service in which like how many requests will come, according to that the container will create. But on the documentation the Google Cloud have mentioned like uh, first 2 lakh service for the every month will be free, like that the things are there in the on the documentation.
okay. The parallel request and concurrent request per container, what is the capacity to handle?
According to my understanding, which I knew on regarding the documentation side, so like I do not have the idea about the capacity side, but yeah, like whatever the request will come, that will definitely handle by Cloud Run side by increasing the resources by the Google Cloud side.
Okay,
But
is there any possible way to increasing the Google container automatically, or you need to set up your infrastructure, the maximum container and minimum container need to be defined on the Cloud Run?
uh, we don't need to define it in the by default way. We don't need to define when the request will come, then the container will create, but by default it is zero. But if we have the some client requirement, like there are some 10 container will be there, so the latency will decrease, so that time means we can define the container size on the Cloud Run service. There is one option is there, so we can define that as well.
Okay, all right. So, suppose you are planning to deploy the new release, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you are going to deploy a new release, So how you will deploy in the production before going to uh, I mean, for example, management will ask you, hey, the upcoming release should be deployed in the production. So what is the best practice you will follow to deploy in your production environment the updated release?
Okay, so for that, what I will do, I will create the two cloud run services, one for the QA or the staging environment, and on that first I will deploy. If the everything is okay, then I will deploy the same thing on the production environment.
Okay, for example, your Cloud Run endpoint URL has not been mapped with the load balancer. So, what is the process to configure your endpoint URL with the load balancer IP?
Okay, so for that there is a one option, NSG, Network Serverless Group. So this is the like when we get the one option in the HTTPS load balancer front end back end. In the front end we have to use the host and path rule, and in the back end there are two options. Like if we select the NSG, then that time we can use this URL or the service name directly. We get the option to choose that. So after choosing that and putting the host and path rule, we can directly uh, we can directly send our request from the front end to the back end in the cloud run service.
So, what is the purpose to use NEG, Network Endpoint Group?
For connecting the cloud run URL directly with the help of whatever the URL we have put it in the host and path rule of the front end configuration in the load balancer.
Okay, so what is the capacity to travel at a time 1,001 million of requests if it is coming to hit your cloud run? So, is there any way to handle the number of requests coming in a high volume? But whatever the request is coming through load balancer and it is traffic is going through the NEG to cloud run, so, is there any capacity limit we need to set, or it's a default one to handle?
According to my understanding, it's a default one, but maybe means we can set that as well.
Okay, if is there any issue will be happen on the NEG, what issue can be raised? What type of issue can be raised?
Uh, the domain name which we have set, so that is not working correctly. That one option can happen, and the resources which we have created in the load balancer, so that particular region server is not working, this issue can happen. So these are the things like issue can happen if we connect.
Okay, suppose in cloud run we are getting 500 error. So, what is the possible way? Probably, what could be the reason which we are getting 500 error or 5 not error?
So according to my understanding, I do not have the exact like I also faced the same error, but that time means right now I am not able to recall like is that same which is also I got the 500, but maybe the user is not able to access the service.
Yes. So, what could be the reason why the user is not able to reach to our container where container is up and running? Have you ever measurement of the waiting response and request wait time? Can you define? Suppose if any request is coming to get the response, so there is some specific timeline which we have defined. So here we have defined that after crossing the timeline, it will be throwing the 5 not error if the waiting time is increased.
Okay, so maybe there is a one option which we can define. This is regarding the health check, and in the health check, like our load balancer is not ready to accept the request. So the resources which we have created, and in the health check, the time which we have put it for getting the response back, that thing is not working. This is maybe the one possible reason.
Okay. And apart from that, is there any other issue which you have faced related to Cloud Run?
So actually, I faced the issue which I was telling you, like the image which I created. So that image, when the developer was pushing the code, that code actually was not able to update. So actually, that image was getting the cache. So that error only I faced, and sometime like we have mapped this Cloud Run service to the Cloud Player. So there is a one option there to check on and off. So when by default actually it was the on, so I was not able to map the service or the URL which I put it in the front end configuration, so that not able to get the request from the Cloud Run backend. So that time I just need to off that option in the Cloud Run's Cloud Player DNS configuration. So these are the two issue uh, I was getting in my project.
Okay, so in the Cloud Run, is there any option to connect to your relational database?
Yeah, I also connected the cloud, yes, the Postgres SQL. So there is a one option there we can connect the database to our service.
Okay, and how to configure networking in Cloud Run? If we don't want to use default network, suppose we want to configure our network. So, is there any possible way to configure our networking with Cloud Run?
Yes, it is possible, but I didn't configure anytime this scenario.
Okay. Have you ever implemented security?
Yeah. So in the terms of security, I was using the IAM. In IAM, I only the member was managing the role, the service account, the user account, which I was managing, and that actually I was managing for the BigQuery and these different types of services. Then there is a one option keyring that also I use. There is a one client for that I put it their key, and that with the help of keyring I was using the customer key. Then I used the Cloud Armor to protect the DDoS protection. This DDoS protection actually I was implement on the load balancer, which the application is hosted on the Cloud Run.
So,
So
apart from DDoS attack, is there any attack have you configured through Cloud Armor?
So actually means the thing which I hosted there, there is a particular IP which I put it. So after rather than that, the no one was able to access that application. So these are the like requirement of that particular client. And there is a one also option was there on the location we can configure the DDoS protection or whatever the requirement of the client that we can configure on the Cloud Armor according to the location.
Is there any possible way to prevent the bot attack?
Yeah, that is the thing only, like DDoS bot attack, which we can prevent with the help of Cloud Armor.
If you are preventing bot attack by Cloud Armor, then what is the role of reCAPTCHA in Google Cloud?
Yeah, that is one also option there, reCAPTCHA.
Okay, have you ever configured the web
Uh,
application firewall?
yeah, web application firewall I use. So for that, like this is the only way, like which I implement the Cloud Armor, which hosted on the application level. And there is a one another service also, IAP, Identity Aware Proxy, that we can use for the web.
Okay, so generally, what is the purpose to use IAP? Can you explain and what is the advantage and disadvantage?
Okay, so actually the IAP we use to protect our application URL, and if we protect that, then whatever the authorized identity we have put it in that IAP role, that user will able to access that application. If there is a no IAP is defined, then the unauthorized user also can access our service.
For example, in a particular organization, they are using, for example, xyz.com domain mail ID, but some stakeholder, vendor and partner, they want to access that application with different email ID, different organization email ID. So how it will be possible to provide the authentication and authorization to access that application which is up and running in our cloud environment?
Okay, so in IAP we can put this IP, these email addresses, and after that, like we can able to give them the access to that application.
Is there is there the way which we can provide the access to the external user through IAP, or is there any other method also available?
Uh, Maybe available, but I never use that method.
Only you are using the IAP, right?
Yeah.
So apart from this URL restriction, or to provide the access to the particular URL of the application, is there any other advantage which we can use through IAP?
Yeah, maybe we can use.
Okay, so
Yeah.
can is it possible to log into a VM through IAP?
Yeah. Yeah, that is correct. We
The
can log in to the VM through IAP. We get the details there. This IAP we can access.
Okay,
The
all
IAP.
right, perfect. Have you ever configured the cross-site and scripting in the Cloud Armor? Have you prevented?
So actually, we never prevented through this method, but there is a one Radware cloud, the DNS configuration. Like these are the different provider, GoDaddy and the cloud player. So like that, there is a one Radware service which we were hosted, the cloud run service we have hosted on that Radware, and on that Radware actually this SQL injection, this top 10 DDoS OWASP top 10, in that the SQL injection and different two three like who is access our application, the particular IP address, which is the location. So all this detail we were getting on that Radware.